All right, welcome everybody. My name is Jessica Harrington. I'm a member of the Newburyport Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Alliance. I also work for the Greater Newburyport Community Media Hub. And the City of Newburyport's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Alliance is really here to bring together employees, local leaders, and people of our community who have joined together to create a community that is more welcoming, inclusive, and a more diverse place to live and to visit. To learn more about the Newburyport Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Alliance, please visit our website, nbptdeialliance.com. So welcome, Charlie. First, I just
thank you, Jessica. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's get started with the questions we have. Question one for you is, what does it mean to you for Newburyport to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion? How do you see DEI fitting into your strategic plan for the city? And what benefits does Newburyport get from prioritizing inclusion?
Sure, I'm going to start with the last question, kind of move backwards. First of all, I think what makes Newburyport such an attractive place to live is the fact that it is very much feels like a city rather than a town, right? And so it's more like living closer to Boston than it is like living in Andover or North Reading. And a good part of that feel is its sense of diversity, which the city has been losing. Its sense of funk, if you want to call it that, over time as we become more homogenous. We were never, Newburyport's never been racially diverse, but it was perhaps more ethnically diverse at one time. So, I never think it's a downside for us to be associated with communities closer to Boston, such as Cambridge, Somerville, Newton, Brookline, because those communities have a particular sort of culture, and that culture is welcoming to others. They are more diverse than we are. But so I've tried to do things on the city council, like for instance, sponsoring, resolutions that condemn ICE's actions in picking people up. So, for instance, one individual who was cleaning restaurants in Newburyport was picked up by ICE and never to be seen again. He was shipped out of the country. And I sponsored a resolution condemning that, and resolutions condemning the violence around George Floyd, or resolutions for Indigenous People Day. And there's some councilors who oppose that because they say, why are we doing that? I think one of the benefits is it indicates to people that we are an open community. And I think that benefits us in terms of signaling to people what kind of community we are. Thank you.
Okay. And do you think Newburyport is a welcoming community to Black, Indigenous, and people of color? And what could you do as mayor to increase racial and ethnic diversity in Newburyport and make it a welcoming community?
Yeah, I imagine that any community that is 94% Caucasian is, to a lot of people, would not feel particularly welcoming. I'll just tell you a very quick story. This is 17, 18 years ago. My son had a job working for the harbor master collecting fees out in Plum Island. And the African-American gentleman came in and asked him where the beach was. My son said, here, let me show you. Took him to the beach, showed him the riverside, showed him the ocean side, and said, I don't know what you're interested in, but then left him. When the gentleman left, he handed my son a tip. And said, you're the only person in this town who has treated me like a human being, and I want to thank you for it. So did that person feel welcome? That was some time ago. I would hope that has changed, but I think just given the overwhelming homogeneity of our community, it's extremely important that we are aware of the fact that outsiders to our community may feel that they are not welcome.
Okay. Where do you stand on teaching US history in the school curriculum, especially as it relates to those times when our community has not lived up to the values expressed in its founding documents?
Yeah, so first of all, I am an academic, and I have a very strong commitment to academic freedom. I think it's important that any instructor have the freedom, right, to teach what they feel is important. And I would want any teacher to have that freedom. I would not want to impose any particular curriculum on any faculty member. And that's very near and dear to my heart, and also to my sense of how important academic freedom is to preserving a democracy. Having said that, there is absolutely no question that a critical perspective on history actually is a social science, and science is defined by a process of constantly questioning what we know, and that's how I'm an intellectual historian. I'm a historian of economic thought, and what we do is we constantly question, receive knowledge, and that's how we improve our understanding of society. So I think that tells you how I feel about this. Do I have more time?
You do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've taught a little bit of this, all right, in economics classes for the perspective, and the United States, quite frankly, started as a slaveocracy, and the Civil War at least ended that. But I think this is an unfinished process. I mean, it's only 50, 60 years ago that we finally began to do away with Jim Crow and with the Civil Rights Act. And I think we're in process as a country coming to terms with our history. And, never mind just in school, I think all of us have to think about that.
Okay, and the last question that I have for you. As mayor, you will be faced with a wide variety of perspectives on these critical diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. How do you balance the desire to build consensus versus taking a leadership role to do the right thing?
So I don't think of it as building a consensus. I think this is a process of building understanding, which is a little bit different. I attended all the DEI sessions that were held early. I guess it was early in the summer, and I was impressed. All right, with the consultants. All right, who kept stressing again and again and again that you must respect people regardless of their perspective. And I think we're still in that place where we need to show that respect for everyone, regardless of their view, all right, regardless of whether or not they disagree with us. And so that's, on this topic, I think we need to understand each other, and we need to build the trust to talk to each other. And through that trust, by familiarity with each other's views, I really have a lot of consensus. I mean, a lot of conviction that we won't necessarily move toward a consensus, but we will move through a greater understanding of each other, and I think that's critical.
Okay, great. And Charlie, I just want to ask one last thing. Is there anything else that you want to say that you haven't said yet? Now is a great time.
There is. And what I'd like to say is not to the extent of someone who's a person of color, but I'm the son of an immigrant. I grew up. My father was Italian. He came here as an adult. He faced what he told me was a lot of discrimination. I sort of have a personal feeling of what it's like to be an outsider. My grandfather, my father's father, was an itinerant worker. Italians used to come here and work, and the family would stay in Italy, and they'd send the money back. And he had blue eyes, and he had worked in Austria, he had worked in Germany, and I really do think he passed as, well, I know he passed as a German because he told me. And he was, while working, he was a mason, like a lot of Italians. He worked on the bridges in the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and he stayed at boarding houses. And he told me that the owners of the boarding houses would tell him, I would never let a filthy, dirty Italian into my boarding house. All right. And so Italians face that kind of level. Another story my grandfather told me, because he was working on the Merritt Parkway, he was living in Waterbury, Connecticut. And famously in the 1920s in Waterbury, Connecticut, the Ku Klux Klan came to town and trying to penetrate the North. And my grandfather and the Italian community went out and said, not here, right? Not here. So the importance that I learned, all right, in my family is that we all have to unite against that kind of racism. It's not here, not for us, and that we are really on the same side on that. And that's sort of deep in my DNA. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Charlie, for participating in this little interview. And this will be accessible on NCM Hub's Port Media YouTube channel for our community members to be able to watch.
Great. So Jessica, thank you very much. It's been fun.
Absolutely.